So let's start talk about the last part of the lecture notes with the actual topics. All right. So sorry, let's go down. Yeah. Okay. So the first part I'd like to talk about is the group and ungrouping the objects. So in the part of the design is that sometimes you will have a lot of objects on the display, and sometimes they are related to each other. It can be grouped together. And for example, you can see on this picture, right? It's only a simple example. For example, you have a circle and you have a line, right? But these two graphic components, you want to combine them as one object, right? So before you group them, you have to process them individually, right? But if you group them together, so two will be like a one object. So one obvious benefit is that you can make size change easier. So for example, once you select both objects, so you can just drag the mouse to select the object. You can just draw on the display, then you select two objects together. So you will notice two of them, they both have handles surrounding them. So that means they are combined as one now, right? So then you can start to make, you can see here, enlarge them, right? Then both of them will be expanded in the same proportion, right? Better, maybe I can show you on the software, right? So over here, as you can see, because I want to have more space, I can close this Explorer window, right? So in order to have more, right? And before, I don't know if you notice, normally I put this to sub window in flow. Let's do that in order to have more space. So you can click that, they become float window, right? So notice they have two different tabs, right? You can still call them back, right? So later on, I'm going to talk about those two windows. So that's why, so now I can just temporarily make them disappear, right? So now, for example, just like the on the slide, right? For example, if we draw a circle down here, then the property that's not the concern we have right now, right? So we just want to look at this, right? So obviously two objects on here, right? So if you separate them, they are individual objects. But if you start to have mouse to include them together, so you basically select both of them together. So in this way, if you start to move the let me see. Oh, okay. So then I think you need to select them first, then right click, then you can there's option called arrange. No, I forgot that it's not here, right? So I think let's go a easy way. All right, remember that you can always select from a menu, right? The functions. So after you select both objects, if you go to the menu, right? So there's a option menu called arrange. So if you click arrange, so that's where you can go here, right? Group. I think there should be a button. So of course you can choose this group to group them together. Let me see, I remember here. Yeah, if you move to here, right, here's a shortcut called group, right? So that's the same way, right? So you can click from menu or you can click this button. So that make these two objects as one group, right? So now if you, like I said, if you resize them, so they will just change the appearance together, right, as one object. So sometimes, especially if you want to create your own component to using those drawing objects, maybe that's one of the convenient way you can do that, right? So this is group. Of course, you can choose the opposite, right? So if you move cursor to here, the other one is called ungroup. So once you ungroup them, so two of them will be separate. Then you can select one of them to process, to change one if you want, right? So that is just a technique, right? So you can use the group and to change multiple objects at once. Right. So later on, you will have a lab. For example, you will have a lab to design the trivia games. Right. So with trivia game, you're gonna have 3 different players. So each player has the same component. Right. You of course you can group one component, one player's component, and then copy paste and make it large and do whatever. So I will come back to this topic again. All right. So that's just starting of some of the actual features, right? You can group them, right? Select, then you use the arrange menu to, or the button to group them or ungroup them. All right. So the next one, next reminder or tip is the offline tag browsing. So for this one, I have a separate demo video, so I don't want to talk about here, right? So you can maybe if we have time, we can watch that demo. So basically, that's remember when we try to connect the PLC tag, we have to do the online, right? From the online folder with the tag browser to choose on the PLC. And sometimes if you forgot to download the new one, you won't be able to see that because you haven't downloaded PLC yet, right, with the new tags. So the other option is that you could create a offline browsing. So instead of browse from the PLC controller, you can directly browse from the ACD file, the Studio 5000 project PLC project file, directly browse from there offline. And the beauty for that is once you finish the offline, then the PLC is being downloaded, getting online, that automatic switch. Right? So you don't have to do anything with the offline to online, because when online is available, it automatically replaces the offline connections. So again, that's I will leave to another part, another video to talk about. So the last part, the next one is just focus on how do we positioning the graphic object. This is something, if you, like I said, some people are really very want to have a very accurate control with the components, right? I believe most people will do that. So at the beginning, probably you just roughly to locate your object to anywhere you want, and then later on you start to become a little bit picky. You want to have more accurate control. So for example, you want to line up to get a specific location for your object. So when you reach to that point, right, so you could do something on here. There are 4 different things I want to talk about. First, there's a grid on the display, right? So you can choose that to help you to locate your object. So on the display, right? So as you can see here, this is your display. If you right click, of course, there are also other ways to do that. I think this is more easy way to do that. So there's option called show grid, right? So that means it has some lines. Right? When I open it, I hope you notice that before was a white background on the display, right? So now you have a lot of dots, right? Those dots you can see they are in the horizontal and vertical lines. So that's why they call it grid, right? So once you have that, that will help you to locate, to make the location of the object very detailed, right? The other options you can see here called snap on. So if you already click the show grid, and then if you turn the snap on, so the object when you create, So for example, if you draw a box, and that object will automatically to snap on the, so sorry, I need to delete that. So double click to change it to object. So whatever you locate, when you drop the object, that object will automatically line up on the grid line, right? So that's a very easy, a very good, helpful assistant when you try to make your object pretty tight, right? So the other thing is that not only you can do this two options, you can change the settings. So right now you can see the horizontal and vertical, they are the default is 10. The spacing setting is the 10, right? If you change that, for example, if I change to 3 by 3, right? So when I click OK, so you can see here, it's more detailed grid, all right? Because those numbers I just type in is the pixel, right? So 3 by 3, obviously you will have a more detailed divisions on the background, all right? So if you do the opposite way, right? Before was 10. If I choose 15 to 15, you will have a bigger one, right? So that will also do the same thing, right? So this is first thing I want to show you. You can look into that if you want to improve the design with your objects. So the other way to precisely control the positions on the object is to use the COM properties, right? Remember that when we have the object, so I'll just turn the grid off, right? So in order to show that, so whenever you create object, there's a common tab on the property. So with that, you have a chance to precisely control the size, right? So right now you can see 80 by 120, right, pixel, and also the position. The position is referenced in the top left corner, right? So in this way, with these 4 numbers, you can accurately locate the object in there. Right, so whenever you make this change, right, for example, if I made this smaller, so that obviously will make the object move upper. Yeah, you can see move up that. And also you have a very detailed, very accurate number to control the location. All right, and shift arrow keys. I think you can see here. You can, when you select the object, all right, so right now if I click on this object, then on the keyboard, when you press shift key and then use your arrow, you can see the object start. Use your arrow key, you can start to move the object like in a small offset, right? So you can see here in this way, right? If you work in a very tight area, so you can use this shift plus arrow key to make minor adjustment. But you have to have your cursor on the object first. Click an object on there first, right? So that's the shift arrow. Alignment tool. Alignment tool is from, I believe it's from the same menu on the arrange. Yeah. So for example, all right, if I create another circle, right? So for example, I have another object on here. All right. So I have these 2 objects, and if I click somewhere else, remove the 2, and now if I choose them as a group, right? Select both of them. Not necessary to set up as a group, but I choose both of them. If I go into arrange, and then you can see here there are all sorts of alignment options, right? So for example, you can align center, right? So you can see right now both objects I can move, maybe move this on the side a little bit. All right. If, for example, if you want to move this circle and with the box align up in the center line, right? So what you can do is to select both, then go to arrange to align, I believe, center. Yeah. So if you choose align center, you can see the center line on this object is lined up, right? So another is, for example, if you choose both, align, let's choose align top, see what happens, right? So you can see on the top edge, they line up together, right, on the same level, right? So for example, if you have a another object, right, this time maybe we choose a button, right, or maybe just use this button, right? So if we, for example, that do this. So if you choose 3 objects together, and you can first arrange them, maybe line up in the center. Oh, not good. Center is not good. Align in the middle. Oh, I have to. There's undo, right? Over here, there's a button called undo. You can undo what you had before, right? So now we should choose align middle, right? Align middle. So that they are lined up, and also notice the space. You can see here. There are some difference on the gaps, right? So if you want to make the gap in between, there's a space option, space vertical, space horizontal. I'm not sure. That's just, I think it's horizontal. Yeah. So if you horizontal them, I can see it looks like not really space. Okay, I think that because there's some edge set up on the button. All right, so probably that's why, because the button has a different object. But if we do this, right, let's choose graphic object and then arrange space horizontal. It doesn't look like they have. Anybody notice anything? I'm not sure if vertical not right. Vertical. But anyway, all right. So those are some details, all right. If you have time in the lab, you can play with it, all right. So those are the options that you can look into, all right. So those are the four things I want to talk about with the positioning, all right. Next, configure the object. So with that, that's the there are 2 floating window I want to talk about, right? There's one called property panel, and the other one is called the object explorer, right? So those are the object when you first create, you may see here. Let me just make them permanent. All right, so if I click this and click this, so pretty much that's first when you open the software, you have 2 fixed window on the right hand side, right? So they are very helpful with the multiple objects. So for example, when you have this display on here, you have lost objects in here. Sometimes you lose track, you don't know which one is which one, right? So for that, you can just click on the object, then on the object explorer window. On this window, you can see here this polygon 1. So that's what you highlight, and that's the name of this object, right? So for example, if you want to know what exactly is the text1 object, so when you select on this explorer window, and then this object show up, right? And because some of the object can be overlap to each other, right? Especially when you have a lot of stuff together, that become very hard to track. So in this way, you can click on the object, so then you don't miss them, right? You don't miss any object on here, right? And the other thing with the this window is that I have to make this panel bigger. Yeah. So all right. So the other thing with the property panel, it's very easy for you to change the connections all at once. For example, on here, right? So I will click this multi-state indicator. So you know the object is called multi-state indicator, and then in the same time you can see here, you have the property window on the on this section, on this part of the screen. So if you want to change your tag connection, you can directly choose from here. So you don't have to double click the object, then double click, right? You know, if you go to the normal procedure that involve a lot of click, double click, select, and all the stuff, right? So you can see, the tag browser is frozen again, right? So let me, okay, so let me close that. It doesn't respond anymore. I don't know. Okay, yeah. So the point is, if you want to change a lot of connections together, so you can use this property panel. This panel is that when you change the connections on the on one object, it's automatically saved. You don't have to click OK, right? Remember that if you do it double click, I don't want to do that anymore. That's gonna freeze the window. You double click open, you choose the tab, you choose make the change, you click OK. So that a serious clicking, right? But with this window over here, once you change this connection on this object, it's automatically saved, take effect immediately. So when you move on to next object, you can see here right now, I choosing the push button, right? What I changed on the indicator is automatically saved. So now I can go on to make a change on this push button. Right. Once I make change on this one, if I click next object, which is the go to display button, and that also has something saved on the previous object. All right. Everybody understand? So this is very easy for you to jump to switch between the objects. All right. So take advantage of that when you have to process with multiple objects. The other two hint I wanted to let you know, let's talk about this, all right? Similar to what I just showed you with the property panel object window for animations, all right? So for example, all right, so if you you have those three drawing object, if you want to make animation change, remember we talked about the animation. So on this one, if you make a change on here, you can directly click apply. So you don't have to close this window, right? So this window can become fixed. So when you click the next object, this window automatically switch to this new object. Right? Remember this object, you can see here, we have the horizontal position with the animation, right? I demonstrated this before, but those two objects are new. I haven't touched any, set up any animation on it. You can see here, nothing is being selected. And on here, same thing as well. So that means if you want to set up animation for multiple objects, you can just keep this animation window open and just click on the object to switch them, and then make change out here, and then click apply. Right, so this is different from this property window. Property window automatically save when you switch different object, but with animation, you have to click the apply. And that's the current version. They designed the feature like that. Right, I think if I remember correctly, if you didn't click apply and just click the next object, we will ask you, do you want to apply the change? So then you can also confirm by that time. All right, so this is the apply button. So copy paste, that's something like I mentioned before. For example, if you later on you're going to design a trivia game. So with trivia game, you're going to have, for example, 3 different players. All right, so let's delete those objects, right? So for example, this is the one player number one. You design one push button and one pilot light on here. So once you set it up, right? So you can even select both objects together, right? So and then Control C on your keyboard. So you copy both objects as one group, and then Control V, then you will have a identical copy right away. Right, of course that it's just the object being duplicated, but you have to go into set up property, right? But by that time, you can just click on this push button and go into here to make the change on the connections. Right, because that's another player, right? Like gonna be a different PLC tag to connect with. All right, so this is something you can use with the copy paste with the objects. The next one is that's group related to the image, right? Very fancy HMI design definitely gonna involve a lot of image, right? So you're gonna start to bring in images into your design to make. You can even make the your own image, or maybe you use your cell phone to take a picture on the equipment. Then you can import the picture of your equipment into your HMI. Then the operator can see on the screen it's more realistic result, right? Because you have the real object pictures on here, right? So with that, you can, of course, you can copy from library. I believe in the lab, I asked you to explore that. So with this, you have to, over here, you can see you can click this button to bring back the Explorer window, right? So if you on the Explorer window, you can look at on here. Underneath here, there's a folder called Libraries, right? They have so many different pictures, images you can use in your design. You can copy paste, similar to what I just showed you on there, right? Also, you can import, right? Like for example, there's a folder called image, right? You can import some of the pictures if you want into your application, right? Let me see if I can demonstrate something here. All right. So for example, all right, if I for example, if I just create a picture, I want, for example, to have these two zoom and my folder list as a picture. Right? For example, I just want that for no reason. I want to have this. And then if you save that, and then on the desktop, right, I can just keep the name called capture, right? So you will see here, there's a picture on here. I created on here, right? That's similar to if you use your cell phone, right? You can see here, when you double click, right, the picture is there, right? So similar to like you have a cell phone, you can do that, right? So with that, you can right click image folder and add component into application. I think so. Yeah, that's right. That's good. So you can see here, it gave you option to go to the desktop, but the default format is different, right? So the one I believe we save is PNG. So if you choose this, you can see here, that's here, capture, right? So that's this one. So you can double click, import this picture into the image. Right? So capture is here. You can see here, it's there, right? So let me open, let me make those disappear. All right. So I can choose this, make more space. There's a component called image. You can see here, right? So for example, you create on here, and then you can see here. Once the browser open, you can choose the picture we want, right? Oh, I don't know why it didn't show up. Let me see. It's gonna be something didn't show up. I'm not sure. All right, so I'll leave to you. All right, I think this is some of the things you can set up on here. Let me try a different way. All right, so over here, if I, for example, create a object push button involved in there, right? So let me see here for the states. I believe I did this before. So with the push button, for example, if you want embed those pictures into this button, right? So you can click this browse and use this picture. Let me apply. Okay. I think this is something with the software. You notice here, I import here, it didn't show up. If I save, I believe that I have to save the application and close the application, then reopen it, that will show up. All right. I'm pretty sure that's the way it can be imported into the application. All right. But that's what we call embedded image into the object. All right. So but I don't know why it didn't show up. You know, this software it has lots weird features. Sometimes you have to do something like back color. I think, yeah, some of you suggest you the back color. Let me see here. No, the back image back color. Image color. If we choose red, apply. Image blink. Transparent, solid. Let's try that. But anyway, all right. So this is something if you want to look into, all right. So you can play with on there on this part, right? Because for each state with the push button, you have option. Not only you have a caption, you can also embed the picture onto the button. All right. Okay. So last part, all right, so this is something I mentioned before on the lecture, some consideration for practical application. Remember the shutdown button, I mentioned that's a default. So pretty much when you create the new display, this shutdown button is created for you from the main routine, from the main display, right? And the real application, maybe you don't want operator accidentally to shut down the application, right? Maybe you want to delete that, right? You don't want to provide that option to that. Or maybe same thing for the Windows control. Remember the minimum, maximum, close the window on there. So you have to maybe take off from there. Right? If you don't want like those push buttons, right? You don't want people to play with your applications, right? So that, but again, all right, that's just for the real application. That's not suggest for the lab, because in the lab we need to be able to fully control everybody's application, right? So communication, I believe I already focused on that long enough. You know what I mean, right? So with the real application, you may have a PLC with different networking connections you have to set up, right? Also, pretty much we talk about display is one type. It's called replace. So every time when you open a new display, you pretty much replace the old one. Okay, everything replaced. But there's also another display you can create. It's called on top, right? So that's similar to the Windows on the computer screen, like a pop-up window, right? So maybe it's in some situation you want to have a pop-up to give a operator a warning or something like that. Like speaking of warning, right? HMI has a lot of features with warnings message, right? So again, that's not a part of this course scope. All right, so that's also, you can consider that in together with, you can have a login security and also data logging features. So that means you can use your HMI to save the data running from your application, right? So that's again not from this course. All right, so that's the topic that just stop here, right?